Welcome to the wonderful world of Belmond.
Classic old soda water bottle, but I really like the shape of it. So you don't need tons of specialist equipment. It's really not essential. So basically, I'm going to now show you a really easy way to create your own container that smells delicious, looks beautiful, and is a really lovely way to give flowers to any friend that you're going to go and visit. And we're using an empty tin can around which I have put an elastic band, a rubber band, and then I've got some sprigs of rosemary. Now, rosemary grows into great big woody stems in the garden, so it does need chopping up from time to time. And the joy of pruning your rosemary is you'll give yourself some really lovely young new growth. So cut off the older woodier stems, and then as long as each piece you use is longer than the width, than the height of the can, you can just snip yourself a whole assortment of pieces. And as you snip, cut in between so that you just leave and you hide that snipped stem with all these lovely little pieces that are protruding up above. And then we take our, so I've created myself a little bundle of suitable pieces here that are all sitting here. And the smell of rosemary is gorgeous. You can use other herbs. Rosemary is brilliant because it's a woody herb, so it won't wilt and it won't deteriorate. Thyme also works well. Oregano and marjoram are really good. Bay leaves are brilliant. Things like basil and mint, the soft-leafed herbs, really won't work for this. They'll really start to wilt fairly quickly. And I hate to be using the C word so early on in my presentation. However, with Christmas only a few months away, this also works brilliantly with branches of pine. So pop that at the back of your mind. We don't need to say that word ever again. And I will now show you. So I'm using my sprigs of rosemary and I have my rubber band and I'm just holding the sprigs around the side of my can. And what I need to do is make sure that each sprig protrudes beyond the top of the can and protrudes at the bottom, beyond the bottom of the can. So you can see that there. So you work your way around, adding in your sprigs. You don't need to keep pushing and compacting them. They will nestle into one another quite happily. And you'll see that pretty swiftly, you've started to cover your container. So we just work on all the way around. And as you're working, just make sure each piece is at least covering the full side of the can. And you place them around. And it doesn't really matter if one or two of them are multi-stemmed and one or two of them are single. So I've got some quite meaty pieces and then I've got some quite puny pieces. So just tuck them all in together. And the other joy of this is if you are having to buy all your plant material, I would always suggest that you try and befriend your local florist, your local flower farmer, any of the local flower stalls, especially at the moment. Independent retailers really value everybody's support. But should you need to, those bunches of herbs, even from a supermarket, are nearly always exactly the right length to conceal a can of beans. You'd think they'd almost planned it, wouldn't you? So in that goes. So I have now concealed my can and I'm using, this is a paper covered wire, which we as florists get quite a lot of. If you can't get hold of it, garden twine or string will work. And then where the rubber band is, I'm just going all the way around and I'm twisting that very tightly just to secure it in place. And then I snip those off. And then that's holding my herbs all in place. And then I'm just going to snip around the base, equal and level with the bottom of the tin can. And I'm using a pair of nice strong flower scissors. Secateurs will work. They're quite woody, those ends, so you will need to be quite careful with that. And there you are. Your lovely container is ready. You can tidy up the top if you wish. I like to leave it quite shaggy, and it gives you a really lovely container that you can then just hide your workings. I've got some really colourful, this is a lovely brand called Twool, who are makers of this lovely garden twine from recycled wool, and they always make really wonderfully colourful lengths of twine, so I always enjoy using them and making a feature of them. They're not the sort of thing that will hide within your arrangement. And then just give that a little snip. So there you can see your little container of covered in rosemary, and you can see all it was just an old tin can. And exactly the same principle can also work for decorating a candle. And this is a particularly brilliant idea if you're having a dinner party, if you're having a party on several tables. At the moment, we can only have relatively small gatherings. So if you're planning to create your decorations at home, having candles all down the table is always lovely. And a way to make them look a little bit more exciting is to just do a wrap of herbs around and blue styly I prepared earlier. So you can see again, it's just exactly the same principle, and I've used a little bit of green Petersham ribbon just to secure that in place. And you can use an assortment of containers. This is just an empty glass that a candle came in. When it was finished, I washed it out, and I have used rosemary just to wrap it off in exactly the way I showed you with the bean tin. So we're creating for ourselves an assortment of vessels. The joy of it is that it means that you can, down your table, you'll be able to build up the most beautiful tablescape. And for events, I'm used to working on events and parties. I'm very lucky I work in the royal palaces, and we work around the world creating flowers for spectacular events and parties when the world is a slightly different place to how it is now. And soon all of that will come back, but at the moment we're enjoying working on smaller events, dinners and parties. And a lot of what I do helps me to then, when I'm reimagining how I'd like to some flowers, they're always a great feed the soul. And I like to create flowers that will form an assortment of colours and textures along the length of a table. I think at home we tend to eat on longer, thinner tables. When we have events and parties, and if we're dining out, it tends to be round tables. And so it's much easier if you're having people at home to have a series of smaller arrangements that go along the table than one big decoration that can often be in the way. If you put one large arrangement in the middle, it means that the people at one end just get the gravy boat and the people at the other end get the whole mix of flower and colour and texture, and most importantly, scent. And when I'm working with Belmond, much of what we do always has to include fragrance, it has to include flowers. What I'm going to show you is using all British grown plant material, much of which has come from New Covent Garden Flower Market and also from a company called West End Flower Farm in Hampshire, as well as having been gathered from my garden. And yeah, there is such a lovely assortment. Get those frosts, and before we get those rains, these are utterly incredible. So I'm creating an arrangement within this, which is just a little vintage French confiture glass. So it's just basically a posh jam jar. And into that, I put some clear water, and I'm going to create a little decoration. And it's one of the ways that I find is the easiest if you're not particularly experienced when you are arranging. The September time is when they are at their most beautiful, because the hydrangeas are all just in the most magical shades. The vegetable gardens are just brimming over with beauty and deliciousness, and all those wonderful apple trees in the orchard and all that lovely assortment of colour throughout the garden just makes you realise how magical Britain is as a venue. So I've got a lovely stem of English hydrangea, and then I've got an assortment of stems of, this is a flowering mint, and I'm stripping off the lower leaves so that I give myself a nice clean stem, so that when I'm then arranging it in water, the stem that's within the water won't have any leaves on it, so it won't be rotting and making a horrid smell, because the thing that causes flowers to last much shorter periods of time than they should is lack of clean vases. And so keep your flower stems foliage at the base, and then you will find that they will last much longer and you won't get nasty smelling water when you're arranging. Now, this is a total favourite of mine, and we use it a lot within Belmond properties. This is a fragrant pelargonium. So it's a scented geranium, and this is attar of roses. And honestly, that scent is spectacular. And you can make yourself the most beautiful tisane from this. So a handful of these lovely leaves added into some hot water. It's one of my Belmond good living rituals that I developed with Belmond. And it's also delicious in a bath. So if you've got a big handful of rosemary and some lovely scented pelargonium leaves, just run them under the bath tap and you'll have the most fragrant and fabulously glorious bath to enjoy. So I'm just assembling a few pieces of assorted flower and plant material. So I've got some really lovely ammi. So it's like posh cow parsley really. And this is the sort of thing that I've been growing in my garden, and also that lots and lots of local flower farmers will have. And it has a lovely light lacy nature to its flower. So it's great because it stops things looking too hefty. And it means that you'll get a mixture of textures and shapes within your arrangement. And this is feverfew daisy, matricaria, which is related to chamomile. And you can make a delicious sandwich or tea of the leaves, and it will help you if you have a horrible headache. So we are using amongst the plant material today is really restorative and really full of health and well-being benefits. So I've prepared myself a little assortment of flowers, a few little treats. So I've picked for you to enjoy. This is one of the last stems of sweet peas in my garden. Lovely white sweet pea just on its little vine there. My lovely dahlias. So I've been picking a few of these, and any of you that follow me on Instagram, if you don't, you can. It's at Simon Lysett. And I always try and share pictures of what's growing in my garden, and at the moment it's the Daily Dahlia, hashtag Daily Dahlia. So follow along and see what we are up to. And whilst talking of following along, I hope some of you might be following along and creating your own arrangements. And if you're not doing it now, you might do it in due course. So please, will you take a photo and upload it, and will you share it with the hashtag FT Weekend Festival, and also the hashtag Belmond Good Living, and at Simon Lysett, and I will then get to see it, as will Belmond and as will FT Weekend, and we'll be able to have a chat and see what you've been up to. It's nice to see what the flower friends that we are making around the world are able to create. Talking of creating, so what I'm doing is I'm using my head of hydrangea and I'm using my hand as a vase, and I'm just threading through my stems of different plant material to create assortment, a smorgasbord of lovely scents, textures and tones. And don't worry too much about there being any hard and fast rules. The joy of what we're creating is that you're creating it for you at home. So it doesn't need to be anything that's too complicated. As long as it works for you, it's going to work for me. There are no real rules as long as the flower and plant material, as long as possible. Those are all the real details you need to worry about. And you will enjoy your arranging, just knowing that you're creating smell gorgeous, and hopefully perhaps remind you of time spent on some glorious summer vacation somewhere, or it will inspire you to look and see where next you may wish to travel. So that's how easy it is just to create that lovely little mix of assorted stem. I'm going to threadle in my little bendy stemmed stem of wonderful scabious. Now these cottage scabious are just a joy. I grew these from seed and they will flower right the way through. They started flowering in mid-June, mid to late June, and they will flower right through until we get frosts in October. They're a great thing to grow. As will dahlias. So dahlias, these will flower in my garden until we get a frost. And dahlias, as are stems of beautiful, fragrant sweet peas. So this is going in just to add a little bit. My simple, easy assortment of flowers. I've got that last little stem of mint. I'm just going to pop him in on the side. And I've got a couple more scented geranium sprigs that I can tuck in here. And then you take your container and you decide how long you want your stems to be, and you make a little skewer. A little bit nervous that it may all come flinging. You can take a little bit of that paper covered wire, or you could have a little bit of string or twine just to put around those stems, just to support and anchor them. And also, if you're not a particularly experienced arranger, sometimes your hand gets a bit achy, so you can always just anchor them there. Give the stems a snip. And then, because we've got some woody stems in here, I'm just going to snip up the woody stems, and that will help them to take up water when it's in its container. And then, there it goes, a little tablescape that's going to be a smorgasbord of colour across our table here. So I'm just going to pop that there slightly. You can just still see it in shot. It's so cute. I don't want you to not in containers that vary in things like this. This is just a little glass sphere vase, and these work brilliantly well. Sometimes you can just float a single flower head in them, but they also work really, really well if you wish just to display a single specimen, such as this beautiful dahlia. Isn't that just incredible? Now these dahlias they're all from Sarah Raven. I'm a big fan of the rainbows, and these I love. Lots of you will be asking me what they're called, and I'm really terribly amnesic when it comes to dahlia plant names. I get, but their names I really forget. So I know it's a dahlia, but I'm really bad at knowing which variety it is. However, there is a chat option on the right hand side, so I can't really see if lots of you are asking me questions at the moment, but if you are and I don't respond to them now, then I will do so later on. I will get a copy of all your questions, and between me and the FT Weekend and Belmond, we will make sure your questions are all answered. So you can, if you wish, cut your lovely dahlia quite low and just sit it as a specimen within a vase like that. But also, because it is so spectacular and gorgeous, it just feels a little bit too criminal to be cutting it so short. So what I'm going to do is have it just as a specimen in my rather lovely soda water bottle. And how cute, how quick, and how easy is that to create. So I'm going to sit him there, just slightly to one side. And so into my little sphere vase here, I've got this cute little dahlia, which had snapped off earlier in the garden. So he will sit in there quite happily. I'm going to snip him a little bit shorter, and he will sit quite happily within that vase. And there's a bee. There's a bee already sniffing out and finding all our lovely flowers and plants. So what else shall we do? I have such a lot of plant material. I think I'm going to do one of these next. So do you remember, these are our containers that we started with? We started with our bean can, and this is exactly the same principle. So if they stay hydrated, you'll find that they will last much longer. Now, this is another scented pelargonium. This is a lovely, gorgeously lemony one. And again, this is a delicious, delicious, fragrant and restorative tisane that at Belmond we use a lot as part of our good living experience. And so I'm using mint. I wish you could smell. When are they going to invent? We do very well with technology these days, but when are they going to invent a means of you being able to smell the loveliness that I am creating? So I've got some delicious stems of mint. I've got a really lovely stem or two, again, of my cottage scabious. So I'm just creating quite a loose little handful where I'm letting the flowers sit slightly higher than the foliage so that they become stars. It's lovely, lovely mint that I've got as well. So a little stem of that in there. And then, just because it's such a simple, it's a really lovely last blast of summer style of flower, isn't it? To have a few of those little white daisies added in. And again, I'm using my hand really as if it's a vase, creating a really soft effect. I'm stripping off any of those lower leaves. What I don't want to do is end up with a soupy mess inside my vase. And you'll notice that we're not using any green foam with our arranging today. We're trying, within Belmond, we are trying to eradicate single-use plastic. So floral foam is a petrochemical product, so it's not particularly great for the environment or for florists. So we're trying to eliminate other ways is a really good discipline to get us to realise how we can create an arrangement in a different way. So creating a tied bunch or a loose design like this just within your hand. If you wish, again, just take yourself a little piece of paper covered wire just to secure those stems in position. Snip that off and then snip the stems, and because we've got a few woody stems in here, just snipping up the ends, which will just them to take up within a little container. And there you can see a really easy little addition to our tablescape. Now, as we're along the theme of using our rosemary covered containers, let's go in for our bean can. So I'm going to steal a bit of water from those two containers there, drop more. And so into this again, because I used the rosemary, I'm going to avoid using any rosemary within my decoration, just because it starts to make the whole decoration become a bit blobby. Excuse me. And I want it to feel quite soft, quite organic and garden gathered, which is very much the inspiration of all the decorations that we create for Belmond, their portfolio of properties. It's just a case of making something really simple that looks as if it belongs in the place that you are displaying it, and looks as if it has been made from plant material that actually grew in that area. So again, some really lovely scented pelargonium and some stems of mixed varieties of mint are really lovely. I've got this little bit of the lemon scented geranium too, just to give a gorgeous mix of different greens. And I would be really, really happy just actually having simply green foliage within this container. I'm very, very happy with that. That pleases me a great deal. All those lovely textures. Look at that dappled afternoon sunshine. Aren't we lucky with this weather as well, everybody? So I'm going to pop him there. I think we've got time for a couple more. So this dahlia I spotted growing again on a fabulously wiggly stem. So he was too dramatic not to enjoy, just like that. So he's just going to sit in the vase. And then I did also gather this from the garden, this lovely festuca grass. Look at that, it's like a firework display, isn't it beautiful? Now Stan, my dog, has really enjoyed eating the grass all summer long. So I'm actually really lucky that we've got a single stem or two to enjoy. Pop that just there. And then into my other jar here, I'm going to pop in a little stem of beautiful sweet pea, English sweet pea, and also this I love. This is a scabious seed pod. So there's lots and lots of plant material you can use, some of which isn't always obvious. It's almost like a little raspberry, isn't it? That's the seed head, raspberry coloured flower there. So eventually that is the seed head that forms. So that's just going to tuck in there. I'm going to make that a little bit shorter. And then just as a finishing off, I might just add in my final stem of lovely fragrant sweet peas. Now any of you that grow sweet peas, they will pretty much be finishing now. But they are just, oh, honestly, I wish you could smell that. That is such a scent of summer. That is utterly magical. So how are we doing for time, folks? I think we've just about got this left. So we're now going to build our little tablescape along our table, which is where the fun is, because you create your containers and then you form your lovely tablescape. So I'm just going to make one more swift little arrange here. Really lovely scented pelargonium, some astrantia, which is this lovely white, it's known as Hattie's pincushion, And they're great because they grow quite high within a border, and they're a really lovely long-lasting flower. And if you give them a bit of a chop mid-season, you'll find that quite often you'll get a second flush of flower, and they're the perfect foil for sexy dahlias like this one. Look at that, isn't he beautiful? That's going to go in there, and its leaf is so lovely. That too is going in. And then another couple more. Just very swift, simply a case of enjoying seeing how we have inspired you to create your own beautiful botanical designs. And the joy for me of working with the team at Belmond is that they have such a lovely understanding of a sense of place, and therefore all the arrangements that we create within their properties feel as if they have simply travelled a very few miles from the garden to adorn your dining table. So now let's build our Belmond inspired table arrangement. So within the centre of my table, I'm going to just assemble. So I have my lovely candle, my rosemary covered candle that can sit in here as well. Lovely tall stems of things like scented sweet peas, simplicity of something like that little dahlia sitting there. My gorgeous all green arrangement here. We can get rid of my twine and my glass of water. Add in that cheeky dahlia there, just because it's so spectacular. Have it. And then I'm just going to pop this one in. That one might sit there rather happily. There we are. And then here I've got another couple of rosemary wrapped candles, some more lovely herbs, and then there's that one there. Look, isn't he just a joy? And then over here, just sit that one there, and another little rosemary candle snucked in probably there. So thank you all so much. It has been such a pleasure talking to you all. It's been great to join you. Thank you to Belmond for having me as one of their good living experience makers, and also for inviting me to participate in the FT Weekend Festival. If any of you wish to follow along, it's at Belmond, at FT Weekend. If you put the hashtag FT Weekend Festival and the hashtag Belmond Good Living and at Simon Lysett, we will all see what your beautiful scented and seasonally inspired tablescapes are looking like. It's been lovely to chat to all of you. Thank you. Whatever you're doing, enjoy it, keep safe, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Take care. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the wonderful world of Belmond.